Clayton Kershaw situation where he was removed from a game before he could complete his perfect game, to which the baseball world lost its collective mind. You actually texted me about this at the time, and I just said, "Yeah, we saw this happen already twice already this year with Yu Darvish and I forget who the other. I think it was another San Diego pitcher actually were removed early.
Yeah,
I'm not sure they actually had
the
perfect games going, but they had. Was it Mania?
Mania, I mean, yeah.
I'm not sure they had perfect games going, but they were taken out with no hits at least. But my point was it's early in the season. No pitcher is getting pushed past at that point 80 pitches in the first week. 90 pitches would be quite a bit, which the Giants don't seem to have a problem with Carlos Rodon. But everyone, it was such a crazy thing because it was like the biggest topic in sports the next day, which I was kind of surprised by because baseball kind of takes a back seat, especially we're in draft season for the NFL. We got the draft coming up next week. We got the NBA playoffs going on, but somehow the whole world was just aghast at Dave Roberts for removing Clayton Kershaw. And I felt like it was this argument was based on ignorance. I think it's people that just kind of parachuted into baseball and wanted to see a perfect game because there have only been 18 perfect games now in history, which is fucking incredible. And the aforementioned Phil Umber has one of those, which is unbelievable. But that's what we love about baseball, that those things can happen. And that a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer Clayton Kershaw had an opportunity to have a perfect game, was maliciously cut short by his evil manager. And I just feel like people that have that opinion have no idea what's going on, especially this year or the context of any of that. They've kind of dropped in, you're out of your element, Donnie, like in Big Lebowski. Just you drop in like a child without any context or understanding the situation.
It's like everyone thinks all these pitchers have had a normal spring training, and every time a pitcher is pitching well and then they take him out in the fifth or something, like we didn't even you and I both at first did not even realize Giolito was injured because we just thought he was taken out because he's not fully stretched out yet because of the shortened spring training.
This is not understanding the lockout has shortened spring training. This is not understanding Clayton Kershaw's history with injuries specifically. He almost did not come back to baseball this year. He almost retired if his back and other issues hadn't resolved themselves. He was not going to sign an extension with the Dodgers because he has such a good relationship with them that he wouldn't take their money until he knew he was going to be healthy. He didn't even know he was going to pitch until January, which puts off his off-season training regimen. Then we had the lockout on top of that, where he was not working with any. Could have no contact with any team doctors or consult with anybody on that. So he was on an island on his own trying to do this training. So they have to treat him with the ultimate kid gloves. He cannot be pushed far. It was so obvious. It is you texted it to me and it was so obvious in my mind that, well, of course he took him out, even if it was a perfect game, because they have loftier goals and he was never going to get to enough pitches he was never going to be allowed to throw enough pitches to get even close to a perfect game, no matter what it was. It was going to be 80 or so pitches at most, no matter what. The thing that I heard over and over again from ignorant people arguing is like, well, what's another 20 pitches? It's like, you don't know what you're talking about as soon as you say
Ask Carlos Rodon. Carlos
Rodon. Exactly. So it just made me laugh. I kind of didn't think it was, when you texted it to me, I literally thought it was such a non-issue that it would just, I think I even
because it was
I almost felt like I was insulting you. I'm like, why'd you send me this text? Like, this is nothing.
Because it was already starting on the
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, you knew more about it than I did, and you have a better finger on the pulse of the populace, I guess, because it was the biggest story in sports for a day, or more than that even, and I didn't think anything of it.
It was talked about in the White Sox postgame show by Garfine and Ozzy and Frank. I mean, why?
Yeah, it took over everything nationally. It was just amazing. So, I mean, Dave Roberts, say what you will. He knew what he was doing. Clayton Kershaw had no issue with it whatsoever. That's the telltale sign that there was no issue to begin with, because Clayton Kershaw didn't make a stink about it at all, because he knows the context better than anyone else. And
what does he want? Does he want to pitch a perfect game, or does he want to pitch in the playoffs and help them win a World Series? That's what he wants.
Well, he
individual
knew a perfect
accolades don't mean anything to most players.
I think
like
it might
mean something if they accomplish them, but it's not the number one thing in their mind.
Correct, but I think beyond, even on top of that, he knew a perfect game was an impossibility at that point in the season. He was never going to be able to throw enough pitches to get to that point, so it was never an issue. He knew he was coming out of that game or ended, even if he had a perfect game going. He knew that going into it. So just such a non-story that became the biggest story in sports, which just makes it some shit I couldn't make up.
Hordes Media.